call this meeting to order. Town council meeting for September 10th, 2024. All right, do we have anybody to lift up for a moment of silence? Okay, not seeing anybody. Well, if we could just bow our heads for a moment. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on. Council, I didn't see anything on the email of any changes to the minutes for the organizational meeting or the town council meeting in July 10th. Does anybody have anything that they want to add now, or we can entertain a motion? I'm not seeing any hands. So can I get a motion to approve the town organizational meeting minutes for July 10th?
I move that we approve the organizational meeting minutes from July 10th.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the town council meeting minutes for July 10th?
I move that we, oh, good. Take it in.
Let's get it done. I also move to approve the July 10th town council meeting minutes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna go on down to acknowledgement. Matt?
Council, the town was awarded a community parks and playground grant from the state of Maryland in the amount of $177,801. These funds will be used at St. Paul Park. We're looking to expand the playground area between the existing play area and the swing set, and also include ADA accessible surfacing. We hope to have this project completed by the spring. We're going to put up some QR codes at the park as well, so residents can scan that and see the plans that we're looking to do in the spring. So.
Okay. Connor, did you want to add on to that at all, or?
No, I mean, I think it'll come to life when you see the images, but this is a great way for those who are familiar with the spot. We're going to get rid of the mulch, bring in an approved surface for both ADA and impact that will be at grade, so that both those with mobility devices and able-bodied children can all play together on the same playground. So I'm really excited that this project is coming together, because we've been working on it for a little while.
Can you clarify if the current playground equipment will also have the rubber, or?
Yes, that is the plan, right, Matt? We're going to do it in phases. So we'll do the area by the swing sets and like the connective area to bring the swing set and the current playground together. But then there's another phase that would take all of that around the current play structure. And then a third phase would be adjusting the walking path slightly that's right in front of the current playground, and moving it so it doesn't bend behind the tree anymore. And so that it'll create a little crescent area where we could fit another ADA compliant play apparatus, which would be affectionately known as the pirate ship, that allows kids with mobility devices and other kids to all get onto this pirate ship apparatus that then can rock back and forth.
Okay, when you say in phases, does that mean it'll be all done next year, or we go into another year?
No, so the CPP grant will apply to phase 1, which is what we're looking at the spring. Phase 2 potentially could be within this fiscal year, and phase 3 is probably a fiscal year away. So,
okay. And the rubber material is similar to the sidewalk, correct?
Correct, like the perky pave type material. Yep.
Okay. Great. Anybody else have any questions? Anyone from the audience? Don't see any hands. Okay, thank you very much. And Matt, Connor, and Alex, I know you guys put a lot of effort into this. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay, B, Matt?
So the town received the monetary contribution from Manor Senior Housing this past week. That is with regards to a settlement agreement between Manor Senior Housing and residents for an improved Kensington, which is accepted by the town through a resolution R-20-2023. This was with regards to the development project, Silver Creek Living on Knowles Avenue.
Okay. Council, anybody have any questions? Anyone from the audience? Okay, not seeing any hands, so we will move on. C.
Councilmember Engel, Alex and I have been working with MTA on a grant to potentially improve the crossing at the Kensington train station. And MTA has agreed to take the lead on a grant opportunity through the rail crossing elimination grant, which is due later this month. That is going to look at the above grade crossing between the north and south side at the MARC train station. In speaking with their director of planning, he has requested that we provide funds up to $15,000 in a potential matching grant if the grant is awarded. As I mentioned to Councilmember Engel, this evening we're just asking for a motion from the council to allow staff to potentially provide these funds up to $15,000. Obviously, we would need a resolution formally down the road, but if we could at least offer up to $15,000 in matching grants, if we were to receive this.
Nate, you want to tag on with any other information on that?
Yeah, just thanks so much, Matt, for the description, and I'll try to be very, very short. Just that the this amount, whatever is ultimately determined, would probably be able to be budgeted for a future fiscal year, because it wouldn't need to be made available until next fiscal year at the earliest. But just to say that this is kudos to Matt and Alex helping to facilitate all of this, and also to the work stream and the pedestrian bicycling access and safety working group, now merged with mobility and traffic committee. The work stream that worked on this, I think, did a really good job in initiating the conversation. There were a couple more ideas that were presented in the overall concept paper that ultimately stimulated this discussion with MTA. But I know Matt and Alex have been having ongoing conversations with them, but connecting the dots, I think really the credit goes to that work stream. I did want to mention that we might want to, Matt, I didn't know if we wanted to seek a letter of support from any of our congressional reps or senators. I don't think a D18 letter would be as helpful in this case. Maybe it would, but it's a federal grant, and didn't know if you were already pursuing that. That's the only thing I wanted to say. Thanks.
Yeah, so Alex and I met with the grant writing team last week. They put together a list for us to kind of for letters of recommendation. So we're kind of working with them on that. So we'll send it out to the council so everyone can see it once we have those. And just to clarify, what we're asking staff-wise is the permission from the council to offer the $15,000. So we're not actually asking for the $15,000 tonight. We want to be able to formally go and tell MTA that the council is willing to provide up to $15,000 in matching. So,
and the MTA would put in how much again? 30,000.
So what Daryl told us on the last call is that they were going to up the number, but they weren't sure yet. Okay. As soon as the grant team passes that along, I'll let you know. So, okay, great, and thanks again, Matt and Alex. I know this came at a very busy time around Labor Day planning, also.
Council, any concerns about the 15,000 amount of money for a decision resolution for later down the line, or any questions for Matt or Nate on this topic?
I don't have concerns about the $15,000, but I'm wondering, can we just peek ahead a little bit at what this might make that crossing look like? Because now that I'm reading rail crossing elimination, and again, I'm just imagining that if you have a big ramp that you have to walk to the end of and then walk up to get over and then down a ramp to get down, and you can no longer cross at grade. I mean, is that the gist of what might happen, or what are the range of things that could happen to that crossing?
Councilmember, I don't know if you want to step in, but I think I can answer this. Okay,
Yeah,
so
Go for it.
the grade crossing would remain for essentially the purpose that it is there now, the MTA passengers.
Okay.
What the above grade crossing would allow is if there's a train there, or if somebody's not comfortable crossing those tracks, it would give them an alternative location. The intent is not to actually remove the at-grade crossing right now. Just to kind of clarify, that at-grade crossing is there through a contract agreement between MTA and CSX to allow MTA and MARC passengers to cross. It's not necessarily there for the public. But they're not looking to eliminate that grade crossing with this. It would just give an avenue to go above the grade if there's a train there blocking. There is some discussions with MTA. They are aware that we do not own the properties on the north or the south, although we are looking at the property on the south, so they are aware of that. They told us that's not an issue at this point. They still want to move forward with the grant. So.
Okay, thank you.
We do on occasion get trains that block the crossing, which is extremely annoying to those who want to get across, and they, especially teenagers, do stupid things when they don't have an option other than going all the way up to Connecticut Avenue. So,
Right.
And then a quick question to the point of stupid things. Will the scope of it present any other recommendations as to, like, at the terminus of St. Paul Street, many people just walk down the street and then cross right over the tracks, even though they could go down to the current at-grade crossing. We'll look at any recommendations as far as how to try and improve or restrict access across the tracks at St. Paul Street?
This grant will not. I know there was another grant that we were looking at that the PBAS was talking to MTA about for Reconnecting Communities grant. We kind of stepped back from that right now. This grant will just focus on the at-grade crossing and an overhead. So.
But Matt, I think I just had since you specifically addressed the point about it not eliminating the grade crossing, at least that's our intention. Would it be possible in the final discussions with MTA to ask about general safety improvements that could be considered in this for the short term? Because I know that you've been having conversations with them about that, and I don't want it to undermine that, but I suspect that this could be a nice avenue for further studying what some of those improvements could be for safety.
Yeah, we can definitely talk with them about that. That might be a better conversation for Josh Wolf and his team.
Okay.
I don't know if it would. I just don't know. I mean, we could ask them, if this is part of this grant or if this is more for Josh and his team to just kind of within their daily responsibilities. So.
Okay. Yeah. If you don't mind following up and asking, and just to also specify that it's supposed to get to ultimately to develop what a 30% design could look like with or without a third rail being added, in case you were wondering.
They are going to include the third rail. Daryl asked them to do this with a third rail. So.
Okay. I thought the conversation was also that it would still be applicable if they ultimately didn't. It wasn't contingent upon the third rail.
It was not. What Daryl did ask the grant writers to do was to address this with a third rail within the grant application. So that is how MTA is proceeding, at least with the grant writers. So.
Okay.
Okay, we good? Any further questions from the council? Any questions from the audience? Okay, don't see any hands. All right, thank you, Matt and Nate. Okay, number 2, the Maryland Land Use Code legislation. Matt?
Council, we have been asked to endorse a letter written by the municipalities of Montgomery County with regards to a language change in the Maryland State Code. There is a draft letter that you should see. It is also available to the public within the packet. And I believe Councilmember Crimmins will be able to lead this conversation.
Thanks, Matt. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. And so the letter pertains to the land use code, which is given to all municipalities, but focusing on Kensington, of what we can control within residential lots. So that is setbacks, height and massing of structures, how big a house can be, how much space a house can take up on a lot, how close a house could be to its neighbor's house, to the property line, to the east, the west, or left and right, as well as from the street and from the rear. And the way that it's written currently, because it's been on the books with the zones that we've always had, is that we can regulate single family housing. With the current attainable housing strategies that Montgomery County Planning is proposing, and a possible ZTA that is coming, that ZTA would change the zoning language from single family house to just housing, because they are going to propose potential duplexes and multiplexes. And what we don't want is for our powers as a municipality to govern setbacks and height and density to be lost due to the wording of the state code that focuses on single family structures. We want it to be all types of housing structure. So Mayor Tracy, myself, a few others have been working with a lot of the other municipalities that also have this land use code language and are concerned, because that is one of the things that we do have, is the power to control those aspects. We don't want to lose it. And so we are drafting this joint letter to be signed by those municipalities to ask that the state code be modified to remove any reference to single family, so that when read and understood and applied, we would still have control over any residential housing, regardless of whether it is a single family structure, a duplex, or what they are calling multiplexes.
So Connor, I was going to say, just for clarity, this does not affect the 7 municipalities in Montgomery County that have their own planning. So
correct.
This is only the 14 municipalities that don't. 2 of those 14 are special taxing districts. So one of which is Friendship Heights, which is nothing but multifamily housing. So so we're really tired. The 12 that signed this letter are the ones that you would be most affected by, any change.
Correct. And namely among them, the town of Kensington.
Yes.
So, we've worked very hard. I think what you're going to hear from the mayor in a moment is a recommendation that we sign on to this letter. I am highly supportive of it. All of these municipalities have worked very, very hard with our town attorney and their other town attorneys to craft language that does not, there's no attempt here to impede on possible changes to zoning that the county is looking at for attainable housing. It's to protect our rights to continue to manage setbacks, height, density, and the other housing codes that we are afforded under state law.
Thank you, Connor. Council, do you have any questions about the amendment? I know it's a little bit longer than it had been previously. The one we passed out, I think 2 months ago. Part of it is our legal, both our town attorneys, Ron Bolt and Sue Ellen Ferguson, who represents us, wanted to add their legalese and they did a great job. So.
Yeah, my only question, not being able to easily do track changes between that July version and this version.
Right.
Or any substantive elements of that you or Connor wanted to point out that resulted from the lawyer's review?
I don't think there was any substance change. It was more just writing it more instead of just a paragraph, which one of our district delegates had suggested, and adding it more as a legislative type of.
So it reads more like legislative text rather than
Correct.
paragraph.
And just a little paragraph that, somebody thought up. So they, so that's why we made the changes that we did.
And Councilmember Lichter, if you can scroll down the number, so number 3 was added, which it was just bolded on the next page. So that was added after a comment from Town Attorney Ferguson.
You said the way it was before, and Connor, you can correct me, that there was too much ambiguity. It was not really clear and hard to read and exactly what. Is that how you remember that?
Yeah, I'm making sure I'm not on mute. Yes. Yes, that is how I remember it. The way it was written before, the number 3, what we were trying to ensure is that we can be we can apply our state code the same to a multi-unit housing structure as we would a residential structure. And the point being that there was concern that what the municipalities, the way it was worded, the ambiguity, that were we trying to find a way to be more restrictive on multi-unit housing, less restrictive on single family, so that as a preventative measure to make it more difficult and the threshold higher for multi-unit housing. And that was not the intent of the municipalities. So number 3 was to clear that up with our legislative partners and the attorneys, so that the way it reads is we just want to be able to apply the same standard to any housing structure, regardless of the number of units.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Okay. Does anybody else on the council have a question?
I guess maybe this would just affect how we drafted things in the future. But for number 3 that we added, if we were to decide that a quadruplex building with 4 families in it was going to have 3 times as much parking demand, and we wanted to make sure there was adequate off-street parking, would that prohibit our flexibility to do that? Because now suddenly we can't, we have to regulate with respect to, without respect to how many residences are in that building.
Yeah, parking is difficult, and I'll go over it in a second on the recommendations that are out there right now for attainable housing. But the entirety of the town of Kensington is in a priority housing district because we are within a 1-mile radius of a MARC station. I mean, the entire town is within that. We also have a handful of properties that are in this optional method zone along Connecticut Avenue. But the result of that is that nothing has passed because nothing has gone to the county yet. But in the planning board's draft recommendations, they are urging that parking parking calculations actually be reduced significantly for areas within the priority housing district. So for areas within the priority housing district where there's any type of on-street parking, they're actually requesting that parking minimums be reduced by 75%.
Right. Well, and so maybe parking is fraud because we might just get overridden there. But maybe take a different aspect. There's probably going to be a discussion about this at a different part of the meeting, but the county put bus lanes on Georgia Avenue during a major construction of the Red Line. And they told us during the construction of the Red Line. And they just announced that, no, actually, they're going to be permanent. And so this is sort of the incremental changes in codes that we don't pay attention to. And before we know it, we're the frog in the pot of boiling water. And so right now, we know we have a huge problem with stormwater runoff in the town. And I think it might be reasonable if a developer were coming in and saying, I'm going to build multifamily housing on this lot. And we do this all the time with bigger developers. We impose extra costs because it's a bigger project and we know they can afford it. So if we were to decide we're going to ask anybody building, above a certain size or above a certain number of units to retain 100% of stormwater runoff for a 10-year storm, 100-year storm. I want to make sure that we don't, shoot ourselves in the foot as far as being able to impose that additional requirement for larger developments within town.
As I understand it, we do not, Darren. So to go to the smallest and work up, duplexes, triplexes, triplexes and quadplexes are now just lumped together as multiplex. But
Right.
you can do 2, 3, 4 units under the proposal by right anywhere in the R40, 60, and 90 and 200 zone. We're
Right.
R60 predominantly. So by right, if you could build a 6,000 square foot single family home, you can build a 6,000 square foot 2, 3, or 4 unit complex.
Right.
If you want to do more than multiplex, which is what they call your medium to your large scale, and I'll show that here in a little bit. To get medium scale, you have to be in these growth corridors. Connecticut Avenue is one of them. So there's a handful of properties that this would apply to, but it's still under optional method. And by optional method, that would come back and there would be a public process, and those type of additional requirements, as you were talking about, would go through our DRB and we could ask to have those.
Right.
Anything that's large scale would have to go through a full sector plan process, the traditional planning process.
And I get that and appreciate it. I guess I'm looking ahead to what the council and planning board are proposing now versus what I can imagine them proposing when what they pass now doesn't for the kind of growth that they're hoping for. And so I would just like to figure out a way that if that were to happen, we aren't tagging along for the ride automatically without being given the right to say, wait a minute, we signed on to this initial deal. We're not on board with this expansion.
I'm not sure how this technical amendment makes a difference in that. I mean, we're not signing on to anything. We are, I will almost say, forced to do it.
Right. Well, no, and I don't want to give up the right to regulate all types of housing simply because the code says single family residential. That
Okay.
I'm perfectly comfortable with doing that. I'm kind of wondering about the impact of number 3, which is, hey, we're going to give most favored nation status to every type of every type of residence that's being built.
I think the reason why that was added, and that was at the recommendation of our District 18, is because it would not pass otherwise.
Mhm.
So they want us
But it also,
to sign on to.
but sorry, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go.
Sorry. Nick.
No, I see Darren's point because it does say it, it cannot be, it can only be less restrictive. So I think the point is that we would ultimately not be able to go through our DRB and make recommendations that would be more restrictive for these types of units. I mean, I suppose we could draft ordinances and regulations to
So
that would be applicable to all residential homes or all residential properties.
yeah,
as more restrictive.
The discussion around point 3 is that not all of these different municipalities have different individual codes of ordinances. So our setbacks might be slightly different than Garrett Park or Chevy Chase View or Town of Chevy Chase, but we each have the land use code provided to us, so long as we manage our code. So what the discussion around number 3 is we would still get the right to regulate all the things we've always regulated, the things under number 2. And a structure is a structure is a structure, so we can be as restrictive as we've always been, regardless of the number of units. But it is permitting that a municipality that wishes to, could be less restrictive if they wanted to, as a way to either encourage or make a multi-unit development feasible. So the point is, some places may realize that the lots they have or the lot coverage allowments that they have or the setbacks they have may make it infeasible for a duplex or triplex or quadplex. And if one were presented and they really think it's a worthy project, they could choose to be less restrictive to a multi-unit if they're doing so in order to make the project feasible.
So and just to carry forward on that thought, if a different town that is thinking about signing this were to say, we like Tacoma Park, we'll say, is unhappy that multifamily is not being built, and well, let's just pretend that they have 10-foot side yard setbacks. They could say, for multifamily housing, we will reduce the setback to 5 feet. And I guess I'm looking at it from the other perspective of, and again, I'm less concerned about what is being presented now versus the incremental next step that I see the advocates for this following, of us saying we have in our code, statements respecting green space and open space. And we certainly think that 10 feet is a reasonable setback with respect to a 2.5-story tall building. But if we now come upon a future council that says, oh no, for multifamily, you can go to 5 stories and 6 stories, then our thinking may be, for that height, we need them to provide more green space between the buildings, because we don't want to have a 6-story house or multifamily house overshadowing a 2-story building next door. And it seems like the price of admission to this legislative change is giving up that right.
I don't know, because like, if going back to the language and Connor, what you were describing is just preserving our ability to regulate as we always have. There is dimension of structure, including height, bulk, massing. There is lot coverage, including impervious surfaces.
Right. I don't see it giving it up, Darren, because we still have it hard-coded into our code.
Right.
We're at 2.5 stories. We're at 10-foot side setbacks. So I also don't see it as limiting our ability as a town, if done on, through the proper public process. If we wanted to amend our code later to, allow 3 story as opposed to 2.5, or a greater amount of setback required, I do not see where this would limit the town from being able to amend its code later, so long as that when we go to apply that code, we are applying it equally across any type of structure.
So, and maybe that's the answer, is that what we will just have to be careful how we craft it. So if we are interested in requiring the largest developments to retain their stormwater on site, we'll have to put it in terms of anything above 5,000 square feet is subject to this rule, rather than anything more than 2 residences. And anything above,
or to a lot coverage percentage, right? Because that's really the issue, is you're taking away the impervious, so hard coding it that way.
right.
And I just want to be clear, because Darren, you said the council could go and change, to 6-story, 7-story high, but that when you say that, I'm assuming you mean the county council, not town council. I just want to be clear.
Thank you for clarifying. That's all I meant.
Yes. Right. Okay. Good. All right, council, do you have any other questions before I'll let the audience, if they have any questions?
I don't have any questions, just to say thanks to Connor for your efforts in explaining this and to communicate to the town the issues. I think it's stimulated a lot of important discussion, so appreciate it.
I think they're bedtime stories now for his kids. So
Pigs in Paradise?
I'm not going to lie, this did come up as a rather lengthy point of discussion at our neighborhood pool recently, which was both in a nerdy way cool, but also I was like, this is not what I thought people would talk about at the pool.
All right, I can't see everybody, so yeah, I can't see everybody on the screen. So does anybody in the audience have any questions? Okay, here we go. Just raise your hand, or really? No questions?
They'll come.
Oh, I see Steve. Okay, Steve is waving at me. Go ahead, Steve Cohen. And make sure you unmute. Make sure you unmute. You look way too comfortable, by the way.
All right. It looks comfortable, but it's not. Anyway,
Okay.
Connor, thanks a lot for your work and all that. And I think I join a lot of my fellow residents in being a little mystified about what's going on with AHS. And I guess I'd like to start with a simple question, or what is the process, and what do you envision the schedule going from where we are now to actually, being in stone? What's the time frame are we looking at? And add to that the pattern book. But first, the first question.
Sure. There's a lot there that I can talk about. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen again, just because I brought all this up in preparation. So I'll take the second. Let me just run through. These are slides provided by Montgomery County Planning. It is the slide deck they use to brief the county council in preparation for sending them the recommended attainable housing strategy draft plan, which is like 230 pages. We will not go through that tonight. But I want to start with a couple of key points. One that Darren and Tracy just brought up. The first is attainable housing strategies is coming to us because the county council recently passed a new general plan called Thrive Montgomery 2050. That set a vision for the county around land use, about how it wants to shape the county over the next 30 to 50 years. Now, the planning board is coming back with its recommendations for how to look at single-family zoning, because the county controls zoning for about 82% of the county. Tracy went through the municipalities that have their own zoning authority, places like Rockville and Gaithersburg. As it pertains to Kensington, we do not. Our zoning lies with the county. So when the county council makes changes to the zoning, either through a sector plan or master plan or through zoning text amendments, ZTAs, that does apply to us. And so right now, the planning board, the 5-member planning board, has made a recommendation to the council called Attainable Housing Strategies. The idea is, wherever you used to have restricted property that could only be single family by right, you could build duplexes, 2 units of housing, a triplex or a quadplex by right. And then in certain other areas where they're trying to promote more density and greater growth, this is within a mile of MARC, within a mile of Purple Line, within a mile of metro stations, or within 500 feet of these growth corridors, of which Connecticut Avenue is one, you could get even larger density, going to 5+ stories, 20 some odd unit apartment buildings, so long as you went through an optional method, a version of the public process. And then there's large scale. So I'm going to go through their presentation deck very quickly. It's 20 slides. I'm not going to hit them all, but just because it answers some of Steve's questions. The first is, when you look at this map, all you need to know is we are R60, and I can tell you we're right here. Like, this is all us right here. The entire town is within the attainable housing strategies area of impact. If you look here, this is our Mark Line station right here. You can see the 1 mile radius is this kind of semicircle. 100% of the town is in it. So this applies entirely to us. This is what they're talking about. By right, you'd be able to build small scale, meaning house sized. So if you could build a 5,000 square foot house there, you can build a 5,000 square foot structure, but you can carve that structure up into 2, 3, or 4 units. If you are in these high density zones like Connecticut Avenue, you could do medium scale, which is 5 to 6 stories, potentially 19, 20, 25 units, so long as you go through an optional method of development, which is a public process. And for large scale, you'll still need to go through the master plan or local map amendments. These are specifically on those growth density areas near metro, but there they would be able to promote much larger, denser buildings. So small scale is what we're talking about for about 95% of the town, with the exception of a handful of properties along Connecticut and a few on University Avenue at the Connecticut split. It just means that they would still be 2 to 2.5 stories tall, but they could be duplexes, triplexes, and quadplexes by right, meaning They don't have to come to the town of Kensington to ask. They don't even have to go through a public process at the county. They simply can file, an administrative process occurs, and they can pull their permits for it. So if this passes, just know that every property within the town is open for multiplex availability. Now, the stress is, it doesn't mean that the county is mandating that this is what be built. The market will drive what gets built, but it will allow every residential lot to be open to multi-unit housing without any restriction.
Connor, can you clarify on the historic district?
So the historic district, as I understand it, and the historic properties themselves are still going to be regulated by the additional constraints that historic properties have, but there is no constraint over the interior of a historic property. So, and I live in a historic house, so it means if I wanted to someday, if I could figure out how, I could put up walls and I could put a second front door on and I could turn my house into a duplex, so long as I am not violating the rules of historic preservation on the exterior of the home, and the new door that I put in is in compliance and gets approved. That could happen. Homes that are abutting or nearby, they have to follow the same Department of Interior rules for being near historic structures, but it does not prohibit them from being multi-unit, because the inside of the structures are not regulated by historic preservation rules, only the exteriors. So this image is, I feel, a good one because it is very typical of the types of tear down and reconstructions that we've seen in the town, in Parkwood, in Chevy Chase. This is on the left, what would be considered a tear down rebuild, kind of very traditional of the types of homes that are being put up. They outline the red door to indicate there's one front door, it's single family house. But this very same structure, completely the same, instead of a garage, because there isn't an off-site parking requirement, you could split this house, down the middle, and this could be a one unit of housing, and this could be one, and they're just showing you, depicting two front doors. And the intent of this is to show that they're not trying to permit more massing or bigger structures in the single family zone, just that whatever could be built by right for single family could also be built for multifamily. And this is how it might look next door to you. Cruising right along. The medium scale, we only have a few areas, and that is along Connecticut Avenue and a few up in the new annexed part along University Avenue. There you could go to 4 stories tall. You could get into stacked flats and small apartments. If you're 19 units or fewer, it can just go through immediately with an administrative site plan. If it's greater than 20 units, or 20 units or greater to be exact, you would go through the existing site plan process, what that same structure would go through today. But the purpose is that these would only be approved under attainable housing strategies along these designated growth corridors, which include Wisconsin Avenue inside of the Beltway, parts of Old Georgetown, River Road inside the Beltway, Wisconsin Avenue, Connecticut Avenue, Georgia Avenue, most of your north-south state highways.
And just to be clear, also, it doesn't mean they don't have to get permits from the town. They still have to get permits from the town. We can't say no to the projects, but they still get reviewed by our building inspector, and then they would have to pay the permits.
Correct.
But to clarify, Connor, you said there would be no additional restrictions. They would still need to comply with our codes and ordinances, which you described as being more restrictive. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Like
so the town's code as written today is more restrictive than the county's on aspects like setbacks. So they would still have to abide by the town's code. The letter we just discussed, to Nate's point, is our attempt working with other municipalities to ensure that that continues going forward. That whatever our code is, any housing proposed within the town still has to comply with the town's code. Large scale is greater than 4 stories. These are identified along the growth corridors and their centers of activities, meaning metro stations. These would still go through the same preliminary and site plan process that they do today, which is a very public process. If they came into the town, they would go through the DRB. DRB would review them. It would come before our town council. We would review them. We would decide, to Darren's point, are there conditions that we would want to put on this, on a large scale property like this, maybe for capturing all of their stormwater or green space or tree canopy. And we would look to apply those conditions to our support for the project. And then we would look to codify those conditions into some sort of covenant or into our release of our permits. But by and large, as it affects just the town of Kensington, what we're talking about are the impact of the small scale duplexes and multiplexes. The last thing I'll bring up, we're R60. We are within the housing, the priority housing district. What they're recommending to the council to consider for adoption in the ZTA is that if there is street parking available, that any parking minimums be reduced by 75%, meaning the part that has to be provided off street. If there's no street parking available, they still want a reduction, but they would like that reduction to be 50%. So this planning has made it very clear in their recommendations to the county that, they don't believe that in order to get housing, they don't think it should have to come with parking. We understand from a town perspective that, we have some streets that are really already problematic because they are extremely narrow, narrower than what the county recommends now because, we're an older part of the county. And that is problematic. The county believes that the market will take care of this. If I'm going to build, 3 townhouses on this lot and I want to sell them, the developer is going to have to determine whether or not they can sell them with or without parking. If passed, we would have no basis for, we don't have zoning as it is. We would be required to follow whatever the county passes. And if they do a parking restriction, we cannot challenge a housing structure because they didn't provide parking. So the last thing I will point to is where to go to get information. I will start putting these links in the chat. Montgomery County Planning is, again, who is in charge of this. They have drafted the plan. This is the planning board, right? It is their plan. They are transmitting that plan to the county council. These are the county council members. It does not come to the town of Kensington. We do not get a vote on it. We will decide whether or not and how we might draft a letter and what we want that letter to say as far as when we see the draft ZTA. And then we will work with our district member, Kate Stewart, and the at-large members, Lorianne Sales and Evan Glass, Will Jawando, and Gabe Alvarnoz. Those are the ones that we work with mostly. But to your question of process, and then I'll get to the pattern book. Let's talk about the pattern book first. So under this, the idea is that what they don't want are these giant cubes to be just plopped down on residential R60 lots. And so they are recommending that a pattern book be created. It is not yet created. And so if and when created, let's see if there's a copy of it in here. Here's an idea of like what the pattern book would do is show by pictures what would be allowed by right and what would not. So it will depict where parking should be and what the massing and size and overall lot coverage should be and what kind of what they call neighborly house details should be applied. The idea is that there are structures they are trying to promote and there are structures that they have no interest in having within the town. So the process is that right now there's a series of listening sessions that are happening. I think I've got that up here. I think it's this one. Here's the schedule. They start tomorrow at 7 to 9 p.m. This is the one that the first 5 are all in person. The last one is on Zoom. So Silver Spring Rec Center is tomorrow, followed by Wheaton, White Oak, Germantown, and then Bethesda Chevy Chase Regional Services Center. If you are interested in attending, they ask that you register first. There is a link to sign up to attend a listening session. The listening session will be Andrew Friedson, who is the current county council president and also the chair of the housing committee, as well as the planning director, the staff director for Montgomery Planning, Jason Sartori. They will be there to listen to concerns and things that people like and to take notes. After these listening sessions have concluded, the last one being the Zoom one on October 2nd, then they can work on transmitting the draft plan to the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, what's known as PHP. And PHP would begin reviewing it. Again, Andrew Friedson is the chair. Natalie Fanning Gonzalez and Will Jawando are the other 2 committee members. From there, it is understood that the county is recommending using a zoning text amendment, which is a more streamlined way to accomplish this than doing a full sector plan or master plan process for zoning. And so they would draft the zoning text amendment. They would send it through PHP. The PHP can review it, and then it would go to the entire council at large for discussion. It would get scheduled on an agenda. But at that point, once they've had public discussion on it, and then they come back to another meeting, they can pass it. So I say that only to say this. I think some people might have the idea that oh, well, this is going to be a long, drawn-out process. It does not need to be if they use the ZTA process, which is entirely what we understand they are doing. They still have to draft the ZTA, and that has to be sent out publicly. As I understand from reading the draft recommendations, it will come with a pattern book, and the pattern book is not yet being released, so it is still being drafted. And the ZTA would, if they're requiring the pattern book, would reference the pattern book. So both the ZTA and the pattern book would need to be completed in order to be reviewed by PHP as well as the council. But those things can all be, it's likely that those things are probably being worked on right now concurrently. So it is expected that the first draft of the ZTA would reach PHP this fall. I would anticipate probably in the next 2 months. I think the draft, if I had to bet, I would put money that it's probably out before Thanksgiving. So what can you do is something that we've been hearing. We mentioned the listening sessions. If you want to know more and hear from planning and council or give them your feedback, please attend a public listening session. I've talked with Jeff Griffiths over at Parkwood. They are working on a Zoom session. Hopefully, they're working with Council President Andrew Friedson to talk about this. They're looking at possibly, last I heard, October 7th. And when those things are confirmed, Jeff will share that with us. We will publicize that through the town's website, the e-blast newsletter. I will be happy. I'll put it on the listserv. Jeff has been be happy to open up the invitation to other nearby areas. Tracy and I have also talked about we would like to hold an in-person meeting, and we have talked to Councilmember Kate Stewart, and we would look to do that after the 7th. So the idea being we can learn from the listening sessions, we can learn more through what Parkwood Residents Association is putting together, and then we can build an agenda for ours, and we would open up ours to nearby areas as well, Chevy Chase View and some of the other residential and civic association areas nearby us. The idea being to have more discussion and conversation about why the county is proposing this, what is the need that's driving it, concerns that residents have for its implementation, right? I mean, there's a lot of concerns already, and the county is trying to address those in the resources section of that website. They will talk to you about the things that they're already hearing. I was on the side a second ago. Some of those include stormwater management, tree canopy, parking, And so they're working to put out information about how attainable strategies addresses all of those. But I'm going to pause and see if there's any questions, because I know that's quite a bit so far.
Well, I just want to bring up too that I know on the list there was somebody that said, we need to opt out. That's not an option. We can't
It
opt
is not.
So,
And not only can we not opt out, whatever passes at the county, we are required to follow. We are trying to work to secure the controls we have under our code. The other thing, though, is on the listserv, we want you to vote against it. The town council does not have a vote. Our weight in this is to engage with our county council partners and discuss it with them, trying to create more public awareness and bring it into the community so that our residents can hear and email and communicate with their county council members. And then at such time as the ZTA comes out, if we have specific concerns, we would discuss them in a town council meeting and potentially draft a letter that we would transmit to the county council.
and more than likely we will do that on our town's behalf, but it is so important that each individual town resident reach out to their county council. We're county council residents. They need to hear from us, not just town of Kensington, elected officials, but they need to hear from our residents individually. So that's why it's important to educate yourselves. I had a question. You got one more?
Yes, it's a comment, is that the residents and the people in the county need to amass political force. You're doing what you can do under your process, but I think this requires a much more grassroots, individual, sheer political force to really get the attention of the county council. And I think we can operate. Now, I don't know if anybody's done this, but it seems to me that's what it requires at this point. I really don't expect you to say anything about this, but for the folks that are listening, I think that's really where the center of gravity needs to be in order to get the county council's attention. So
well, I do think, Steve, that they're on this call. There are probably people that are looking for this opportunity. So the council is not taking any position either way.
Right.
We just want to make sure right at this moment that we get educated as well, but we also that we protect the town by still having these ability to regulate what we currently have for multifamily, not just single family.
I understand.
But that is our goal today. That is what we're working on today. We're not taking any stance either way. I know our county executive, Connor and I were both on his call last week. He's against this, totally against it. Because he wants affordable housing. He's not interested in attainable housing. So, attainable housing, you're probably in this neighborhood, you're still looking at probably an $800,000 multi-unit. So it's not, people should not feel like this is going to somehow lower our property values. That's just allowing somebody who can't afford $1 million house to buy an $800,000 house.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, Tracy, if I could, that's a really good point to bring up what the county executive's position is that their attainable housing does not address affordable housing, meaning finding a way to produce housing that can be made available to people who are making a certain income level or lower, right? The people who are most in need, who are unable to afford housing in the county, this does not directly address it. The thought process is that, if we take this house, and let's say wherever this house resides in the county, it's worth $1.6 million on the market. If we carve it up and we provide 2 units of housing, and so long as those units of housing individually are both less than $1.6 million, that meets the definition of attainable. They're less than market rate, but they're also less because they are smaller square footage wise. But it could mean the example that the county executive gave on our call was a $1.8 million property in Bethesda that was purchased that looked very similar to this, was torn down and replaced by 3 townhomes. Each of the 3 townhomes is $3.6 million individually, meaning the total real estate is $10 million. That's part of why he has a problem with attainable housing. Is it is not protecting naturally occurring affordable housing. In fact, it makes much of the naturally occurring affordable housing targets for redevelopment, but it also has no mechanisms to provide affordable housing.
Thank you, Connor. Okay, it is 7:30. We're going to open this up to questions. We're going to give it about 15 minutes. I don't mind extending it a little bit, but please keep your questions short and to the point so we can keep it moving. Okay, Jealous? I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Good. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Very good. Several years ago, the county very nicely came in and told us that we had to have a town center next to the train station. Is that town center still on the books? How many units of housing would that be? And when combined with this new attainable housing project, how do you foresee Kensington would look after both those things are working and in place?
I'll let Connor answer that because he was in on the sector plan really deeply, but it seems like they've moved on from our sector plan because when they do a ZTA, it cancels out whatever was in our sector plan.
Right. So
Connor?
Kensington's sector plan was drafted and adopted in 2012. So it's 12 years old, and we have accomplished essentially 2 new housing buildings. So it's there, the density is there, it's just not being redeveloped. And that's not uncommon for areas in what we call down county because the land is very expensive, first of all. And if you actually look at the plats in our town center, we've got a very interesting mix of a lot of very small plats that you need to aggregate together. And we don't have a lot of property owners who are willing to pull together 6, 7 different properties to make the size you need to build that style of building. So that's part of why we haven't seen the density that our sector plan could bring. That's also part and parcel, call it, this is the other side of the coin for what attainable housing is saying is, well, we really haven't built the units of housing in the higher density areas that we thought. So why don't we open up the single family parts of the county to additional housing? And so the argument is it doesn't increase the density of the housing, it just increases the number of units. But now we can sprinkle it throughout the county. There are criticisms and there's reasons that are supported for this and there are criticisms to it. The criticisms are, wait a second, I thought what we were trying to do is create higher density around metro stations and around where we want to place bus rapid transit. And if we're sprinkling this across all of the R40, 60, 90, and 200 zones, then we are not concentrating housing density in those areas. And that's true. Now you can be putting, houses, in White Oak and in Wheaton and in Kensington and in Poolesville. And that doesn't necessarily lead to people taking mass transit. So to answer the last part, what are they trying to do here? They're still trying to promote ways to incentivize the development in these high density areas, the growth corridors, and the areas around transit. According to the county executive meeting that we were on, there's tens of thousands of units that have already gone through the public site plan process and are approved, but are not being developed. And when he asked developers why, what was provided is that rents aren't high enough yet. That the buildings that the developers want to build, the difference between building 300 units of apartments that might go for $2,000 a month, or 300 units of apartments that might go for $7,000 a month, is economically very little to a developer, to the difference between those. But obviously on the tail end, the rents that they can get are significant. And so they're waiting for rents to go up before they build those units. And so again, to County Executive Elrich's meeting, his point is attainable housing, this strategy does not tackle that at all.
Karen?
Yes, thank you. These are very complicated questions and issues, and I'm very thankful that the town is taking the time to provide more information and discussion about them. when you were, and you kind of alluded this a little bit, we have the sector plan. It seems to me that this attainable housing strategy kind of tears off of Montgomery Thrive, the Thrive 2050 document that I think was passed the year before. And while we've been talking about kind of like the timeline for approving the zoning changes, do we have any sense, particularly for those of you who've been in our town for a long time and seen how development's changed, in terms of like the timeline, like would the zoning change and then like tomorrow our town be totally different? Like how does this actually play out in terms of the changes we might see?
We don't know.
Yeah,
We don't know.
there is no way of knowing.
Yeah, we don't know, but I'll give you some of my thoughts. The first is the zoning text needs to be amended. And as I mentioned before, it's expected that the draft will come to the county council this fall. If they choose to move as quickly as they are permitted to move, they could be voting on it before the end of this council, which is December. And I don't know if there's any appetite to do that because they change leadership in January, but they could move that quickly. Now, to Steve's point, if they hear from a large population of residents that, hey, this is just moving too fast, maybe they change that timetable. Once it's voted on, the other thing they have to talk about is what is the implementation timetable? They could set it as quickly as, I think, 30 days, meaning from the day it passes at the council, the zoning text could go into effect 30 days later. They can opt to choose any date after that, but if they choose to call this emergency, they could do it in as few as 30 days. So the point is this could really go from draft text to county council review to vote to implementation in 5, 6, 7 months or less. 5, 6 months. It is possible. Then what happens? Well, then these things are simply permitted by right. They're not being required. So if there's a lot next to you or your neighbor decides to, sell their house to a developer who wants to tear it down and build something new, they're not being required to provide duplexes, triplexes, or quadplexes. They simply have the option to do it. And so this is the reason why we don't know how quickly might this change the fabric of a town like Kensington, because part of that is going to be what does the market, how does the market drive that? If people aren't interested in buying townhouses in Kensington, they're not going to build them because they won't be able to sell them. But if there is a market for it and people want to buy a 2,500 square foot townhouse in a 5,000 square foot structure, and they're going to have a neighbor next door to them, and it's just a side-by-side, and that market is there, and it's priced where the market will transact it, then, yeah, you may start to see these.
It's kind of similar. I mean, it's a bigger change, but when the attached dwelling units were now, more easily embraced by the county council, that we saw a small number of them being built. It's probably a handful. Matt, would you say about maybe 5 or 6 within the town?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking that in a sense, this is similar to that. And there are all sorts of bizarre little constraints that I think Kensington has, say, than other areas that are within a 1 mile radius of one of these marker metro stations that, the market's going to react to. It's not necessarily, while we love our walkable town, it's not necessarily walkable to getting to your job or something like that. So I don't think that this is, I personally don't think it's as catastrophic as kind of some people are making it out to be. And for me, when I look at the changes that were even just being encouraged by the sector plan, we didn't really see that. And that would have been interesting, right? That would have been, I don't know, something to look forward to. And so for me, the question is, more so how can Kensington, whether it's, this or other plans or sector plans, work to develop the town in a way, right, where we can support businesses, where we can continue to attract families of various economic levels to come and live here, because that's, I think, what really makes our town unique and a good community.
Thank you, Karen. I agree. Joe? Joe, are you there? You're off mute, but I can't hear you. Now you're on mute, and I still can't hear you. Are you there, Joe?
I find these meetings really awkward.
Okay. Joe, let's see if you can get your sound fixed. Anybody else have a question?
You can't see him, but John Haynes.
Who does? Oh, John Haynes. Oh, I'm
Haynes.
sorry. Oh, there you are. Okay. Go ahead, John.
The construction of expensive units, either, 2 or 3 expensive townhouses on a lot, or, and I'm thinking of the house that just had an open house Sunday at Saul Road and Kensington Parkway, where they tore down the house and put up a $2+ million big box. Pretty ugly. But anyway, the idea that we're going to achieve some sort of easier access for people that don't make multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars of annual income through this scenario seems to be contrary to what is happening when lots such as ours get redeveloped in places that are like close to Connecticut Avenue or close to downtown DC as Kensington is. So if we do want to have a community that firefighters and teachers can live in, or even ordinary government employees, what's the solution? And is this anything in that direction? Or is that just a complete fantasy?
Well, and that's very true. And as you know, even on the presidential level, they're talking about housing, making housing affordable. So this isn't just a Montgomery County issue. It's a countrywide issue where people are being priced out of the market. So I don't know. I mean, I do feel that this is in some means going to pass, and we're going to have to figure out how to make it work. Now, the good news is nothing's going to happen right away. I seriously doubt that, especially on a large scale. And that, it has to economically make sense for a builder. If it doesn't make sense, they're not going to build it. If they can get, $2 million for a house that fits on a piece of property, my guess is they'd rather just build that $2 million house. But it's all about price points, and it's about, what are they going to walk away with profit? So, all right, Joe, I'm going to give you one more chance. Are you there? Okay, I know you're up. Now you're muted. You're unmuted. Okay, well. Jim, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did, but I don't know. I can't see it.
Okay, and I don't see your hand, but I saw you moving
well,
around.
I'm trying like crazy to get connected, but I am not.
Okay, don't worry about it. We'll take your question. You'll be our last.
If you take a question sight unseen.
Yes, go ahead.
I listened to Mark Ehrlich this afternoon, and I found it was very interesting and very informative. And what I didn't realize until now, but the whole power lies in park and planning.
Yep.
And or at least that's what I assumed. And park and planning also oversees historic districts in the whole historic HPC. And my question had to do with, if this law passed, what effect does it have on the plats that were established in 1891 or 1893, something like that? And to what extent does the old issue of footprint and space within the plat, is that still going to be of any significance, or that all goes down the drain?
I would think in the historic district, it's still overseen by the HPC.
Well,
So,
but they're part, but Mayor Tracy, they're overseen by Park and Planning.
well, they're also overseen by the Maryland Historic Trust too. I think they're
Exactly. And the federals as well.
Yeah,
So-
so Jim, what I understand is historic preservation would still apply to the outward appearance of the historic property. So everything you're required to do by the Department of Interior standards, as far as hyphens or differentiation between the historic entity and anything new that you might add on to, all of that still applies. However, whatever the DOI standards, as you probably know, and I know because I did an addition on my home, which is in the historic district, it does not pertain to anything inside the house. They cannot tell you where to put your kitchen. They can't tell you where to put your bathroom, or even how many you necessarily have, so long as the outside conforms to the historic preservation rules. And so in that case, take my house, we tore down a non-contributing portion, and then we did an addition off the back to add bathrooms and bedrooms for a growing family. But I could have done the exact same thing and had it approved and carved it into 2 units. One that you access off the driveway through a quote front door, and one off the original front door. And so long as those doors and everything else conform to the Department of Interior standards and were approved by HPC, the fact that I carve it up into 2 units of housing, as I understand it, HPC cannot deny that.
Well, can I respond?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're absolutely, I mean, I understand that, but you still had to run that past and get it approved by the historic group. And if they had said no, you'd had to, you'd had to modify whatever you're proposing. I want to use the same example, and not that I plan to, but in other words, if I wanted to take my garage, tear it down, and put up a unit back there for, a 1-bedroom apartment for that would fit within the, I mean, I can't imagine that the HPC would ever allow that.
you can
But-
have an accessory dwelling unit in the historic district.
Historic district.
No, but it has to fit within a certain footprint. I mean,
Well, I
Tracy,
understand,
Yes.
that, but
Yeah.
you could
Yes.
make it an apartment. You've got one
Yes.
2 doors down from you, 3 doors down from you.
well, but they have, sorry.
And so, Jim, I think we're saying the same thing. If
Right.
it's permitted under HPC rules now, right? Like, so long as they rebuild it on the same footprint that your garage is on currently, then it's totally permissible. They can't tell you, well, wait, you're putting another unit of housing in there? It's already allowable by accessory dwelling units. It's just, they couldn't build another 3,000 square foot home back there. They could just take the footprint, as it were. Now, let's assume we're getting nerdy here, but let's assume your garage is also a non-contributing structure, right? And it's already permissible to be torn down. If that were the case, then yes, a structure could be replaced on the exact same footprint, so long as that structure conforms to the HPC rules as determined by the DOI. And if you don't want it to be a garage, you want it to be an apartment, that is already permissible today under the accessory dwelling unit ZTA.
No, I don't want to bore the rest of the folks listening to this, but all I'm getting at is, no, what I'm saying is I wanted to make it larger so that you could actually sell it. I mean,
Nope.
and I would hope that would not occur, okay, that would not be permitted under this new.
No, as I understand, they can't tell you how many units of housing, and they can't tell you it can't be housing so long as you are following the same rules that apply today. So it can't be larger, right?
Okay.
Just like you want to add on to a current historic structure, it can't be greater than the size of the contributing structure. I'm getting really nerdy here, but it's the 51%.
And I was just concerned about the same, the Park and Planning had oversight potentially over this particular proposal as well as the HPC and what extent they could somehow change?
I don't think so. And I do want to move on here, Jim.
Yeah,
so,
sure. Great.
but thank you for your question. Okay, Joe, I'm going to give you one more chance to see if we can.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Furman. How's
There you go.
that?
That's fine. Can hear you.
Yeah, 4.5 years and we finally figure out how to do this, right?
Yeah.
I have two questions. Really, they're very, very brief and oriented toward clarification. One is that the town of Kensington is in the AHS area only because of the MARC station. Is that correct?
And Connecticut Avenue.
Well, yeah, the Connecticut Avenue part, but
Well,
if not
yes
for
and
the
no.
MARC station, if not for the
No.
MARC station, then this would not be applicable to the town of Kensington. Is that right?
No,
No,
it
that is
would.
not correct. Yeah, we are absolutely within it because our residential lots are R60. That's why we're in it.
Okay.
What you're talking about is that we are in the priority housing district. So the priority housing district is those areas within 1 mile of mass transit centers. And in the priority housing district, things can be done. You have the ability for the medium size attainable housing. And then on the growth corridor, Connecticut Avenue, you have the ability for the large size attainable housing. So we were going to be in this no matter what. It's just that all three, small, medium, and large, apply at different parts of the town because of the MARC station and Connecticut Avenue.
Okay. Well,
Next question.
yes, has to do with Connor Crimmins' essay in the latest Kensington Around Town. The very last sentence says that the county has emphasized that this would be an incremental approach with new housing types likely initially comprising a small percentage of Montgomery County's overall housing stock. Two questions along those lines. What does that really mean? It sounds very
Sure.
vague. And second of all, how do we know that this is going to be an incremental approach that will comprise only a small percentage of the housing stock?
You don't. I mean, quite honestly, who knows? It could be every lot that ever goes for sale.
I mean, you
Being
wrote it, so
facetious.
what does that mean?
Right. What does it mean? If you read the 230 pages, there is a footnote within there by planning staff that says, and I'm going off memory, but to the, along the lines of, it is their estimates that this will produce no more than or roughly 200 units of housing per year.
Throughout the county.
Throughout the county. So what I'm trying to do is go down the middle and just provide information, right? We're not trying to say we're pro or against. I'm providing both sides. In the county executive Zoom that Mayor Tracy and I were on earlier this week, why he is not in favor of AHS first is affordable housing, but the second is that footnote, because his point is if the county planning and the Council of Governments is saying that we have this huge housing shortage to the tune of 30,000 units, and they are presenting attainable housing strategies as the initiative to help address that, it doesn't make sense because in your own assessment and report, you indicate that you don't think it will provide more than or result in more than 200 units of housing. So
A year.
why
That could
a
add up
year?
very quickly, and I don't think that's necessarily a small or insignificant number. But do you know where the planning staff got that number, that estimate? Is it just something they drew out of thin air?
That their staff would have done that based on calculations likely from other jurisdictions. I don't know exactly how it's done, but the county executive seemed he's very pro that they're very good at their estimates, which is why he grabbed onto that number to say, I truly believe their estimates are always very, very good. But because I believe in them, that's why he has a problem with 200 units isn't enough, like to disrupt the whole zoning for the county.
All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. I've given this an extra time, and so we're going to move on from this topic. All right. So we're going to move down to number 3 now on the Pliers Mill variance hearing. Matt?
Sure. Council, before you this evening is a variance hearing request for 3417 Pliers Mill Road. The resident, Rachel Leffler, is on the call. They are requesting to replace an existing 6-foot cedar fence with a 6-foot vinyl fence, which would be encroaching upon the front plane of the property, which is why it's requiring a variance. Typically, our code only allows a 4-foot fence within the front plane. This would be a 6-foot fence. You received information with the plat and the Leffler's statement of justification, and you also received a recommendation from the town staff. Ms. Leffler, if you'd like to provide any additional information.
Yes, thank you. I think my husband Jason is going to.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all. We'll try to keep it as spicy as the previous conversation. But essentially, we're just here to say the reason we want to do this plan is, well, we're longtime residents of the town of Kensington, not super long, but since 2011. So we're truly invested. We think we're good stewards of the community, and we really just want to make an improvement to our property that is just a replacement of something that's already there, something that's existing. We just want to change the materials, and we think it'll improve the look of the property, and it will also enhance the neighborhood. As I mentioned, we want to replace the materials. We don't want to increase the footprint of the current fence, the current privacy fence that's there. The current one is made of cedar wood, and I think it was installed in 2012. So over the years, it's experienced some rotting, some damage. Some of the wood is warping, and really it just it's starting to look dilapidated. And we're looking to move to a vinyl material. Like I said, we're not coming any closer to the road than it already is, to Pliers Mill than it already is. We're not extending the footprint at all. We want to move to the better quality material so that we can not have to replace it every few years like you have to do with wood. I understand the zoning requirements for fences may have changed since the original installation of the fence, which is the reason why we need the variance. So as I understand it now, as the fence moves alongside our neighbor's property, between our properties, coming towards Pliers Mill, the current zoning is that it can't extend beyond the front of the house as you move towards the front, towards the street on the front. With the 6-foot privacy portion of it, as I mentioned, we've already got that 6-foot portion that does come towards Pliers Mill. It's still 26 feet back from the road, and really our property's kind of unique because it's a corner lot, but it's also raised, so it's elevated from the street level and the sidewalk level. So really, it's not causing any line of sight issues. It's also it's not even, it's minimally noticeable.
Back from our property line.
Yeah, so really what we want to do is still 3 feet back from the front of the property line, which is 26 feet back from Pliers Mill. And it's only a perpendicular fence. It's not moving laterally along the front of our property or anything like that. So it's minimally noticeable to traffic or to any people walking by in the street. It also sits under tree coverage, so we've got mature trees that are covering that whole area. Additionally, we just at the time we've owned the property, our neighbors have also built their home out to so their home is fairly close to the side of our property. It comes within a few feet, maybe 3 feet or so. So we want to maintain kind of the privacy dynamic that we currently have, and just kind of keep our privacy. They've got a bank of windows on the side of their home that if we didn't have the privacy fence, it would really be looking right into our yard, and the way the property is situated, the bulk of our kind of usable yard is really on that side of the home. So that's the part we we enjoy most, and so we would lose that privacy if we weren't able to just do the replacement.
Okay, and
So
it obviously provides mutual privacy for your neighbor
Yes.
who I understand has been contacted but prefers not to comment at all on the fence. That's my understanding. Is that correct, Matt?
Correct. We've reached out to the abutting, confronting, and conforming neighbors. We've received no comment.
yeah, and we don't know
That's fine.
them all that well. Sorry.
But I mean, that's fine. They have the option to comment or not to comment. So, and this is just a fence you've been repairing.
Well, no, we haven't repaired it. It's got so much termite damage and it's warped. And so we want to just put something new because it's, you know, like what I noticed in the town is when you drive around, some people don't upkeep their fences. And I feel like, you know, we don't want to be those people that lets their fence go. And so like we can get our lawn cut every week, but I also think having your fence is a maintenance piece. So we wanted to just take it all down and invest. We did get a puppy. So we want to make sure that he can run around and not get into anyone else's area. You know, if you're a dog lover, you know how they like to get out and run around. So we really want to kind of keep it so that we can have an area for him as well.
Okay. Council, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
I just have one. I couldn't figure it out from the variance request. I'm looking at Google Maps. I live a block away. I know the fence. I mean, I'll make two comments. One is when you're coming westbound on Pliers Mill from like Georgia Avenue, the one thing as a positive, like this fence does not impede on line of sight at all as currently. So if you're just replacing it in kind, in location, you being on a front plane, that has no bearing. My only question is, the very last section of this fence toward Pliers Mill is stepped down from 6 feet to like 4 feet at like a, whatever, 45 degree
tapered
angle.
down.
Yeah. Is that in your new design?
Yes, that's the issue. So the new fence starts right at 6 feet. And we want, and so we wanted to get the vinyl fence, and the materials we selected start at the 6 feet.
Yeah, the vinyl material that we want to replace it with, that's the only thing. It wouldn't be graduated like that. It would just be, it's just.
And we don't want to do wood because we felt after having that fence for, you know, 12 years, you know, we would like to be able to just, you know, more higher maintenance, and it's a better quality.
But that would be the only difference, to your point. With it would not be that graduated diagonally like it is on that final panel. It would just be start at 6 feet in height.
And other than the dog, that final panel, because that one is arguably 12 to 15 feet out from the front plane of the house. Other than what privacy, what other, could you just have 6 feet but not have that final panel, like have it start where you have 6 feet?
Well, we're doing a yard fence, and the county has approved a 4 feet yard fence for us.
Okay.
For the front. And so where we wanted the new fence because it would be color wise, so they would meet and they would match, and they would be, and we wanted them to install them at the same time, so we didn't have two different fabrications, and so that it would be all done by the same fencing company.
Those are my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Can we go back to the group shot, Alex? Thank you. Any other council member have anything to add? Okay.
I do not. Thank you.
On this piece of paper, it says Maple Avenue, or Maple Avenue. Is that just an error by the?
No, the names of the streets changed in the 50s.
Oh, did it really?
Yeah. So all the streets on the north side were named after trees previously.
And then they changed it to people. Okay. Okay, Mr. Wheatley.
Makes it very confusing when we're trying to get approved.
Look at that. I did not know that. So I learned something today. Okay, I'm sorry, Nate, did you have something?
No, I was just saying I don't have anything. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody out in the audience have a comment to make? Okay, I'm not seeing anybody. Do you want to vote, Matt, that we accept the variance?
Yeah, if council supports the variance request, we're requesting a motion to draft a resolution for our October meeting.
Okay.
If it is verbally motioned approval this evening, the Lefflers would be allowed to proceed with the permit prior to the resolution being adopted.
All right, so verbally just being hands up, or you want an actual motion?
Motion to draft a resolution, please.
Okay. All right, can I get a motion to draft a resolution?
I'll move.
In
Okay.
support, sorry, in support of the variance request.
Is that correct, Darren, in support?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Loeffler.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much, all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, number 4. That would be Anne, or Anne, are you gonna bring up number 4, the parking task force?
Sure, I'll start us off and then Connor, please fill in. Those of you that follow along know that at our organizational meeting in July and then shared at the town council meeting in July, we've decided to establish a parking review task force or ad hoc committee. We've noted and have been in consultation with residents, with businesses, that we've got increased parking pressure within the town, especially the quadrant coming off of our commercial core on Howard Avenue down to the Johnson Shopping Center. And so Connor and I are co-chairing this effort, and in our planning conversations decided that it would make sense to put out a call for nominations in the community for members to, put their names forward to serve on the committee, so that we can be sure that we have diverse representation from different quadrants within the town, as well as residents, both those living in, homeowners and rental units and businesses. So we're working on getting that nomination form out soon, so that we could ideally hear back from folks in the month of October and possibly kick off late October. But Connor, I think that depends on if we want to get in the next town journal or publicize via other means. So Connor, if you want to add any more, please do.
No, that's great. I mean, we know that we've got some parking pressures and hit kind of where we've heard it the most recently. But if we're going to start a parking committee, we're looking at all parts of the town and we're looking at all types of parking. So this committee will be tasked with looking at everything from the Pitchfork to where the Kensington Shopping Center is and the roads and network around there, up on the north side, by my house, St. Paul Park, but also, as Ann said, the commercial corridor. It's to look at how are our streets signed for parking? Are they striped? Do we need to make recommendations for updating or changing any of the parking restrictions? How are we doing parking permits? How are we doing parking enforcement? Do we want to ever consider a parking management system? What off-street public parking do we have available, and is it sufficient? What off-street public parking might be available, and should the town acquire it? What off-street private parking could be made available through like a parking agreement? And what might that look at? So I want people to know that we are looking for volunteers who are willing to roll up their sleeves, because the town has never taken this on. We've just kind of started applying signs when we hear concerns, and we want to now be very purposeful as we grow both our commercial corridor and we're seeing new buildings through the sector planning process, that we want to really take a look at kind of how the future of parking in Kensington might look. So I hope people will volunteer, because we want to bring forward any concerns about parking from anywhere within the town.
And
Plus,
also,
you get to work with me and Ann. So why?
And also, just if you're daunted by that list of tasks and ideas to analyze, please know that we will be scoping this to first handle short-term, easier to implement solutions or changes, along with medium-term or longer-term things that should be analyzed and potentially implemented.
Sounds great. Okay. Do you, how long do you expect maybe in a couple of months that you'll come back with something, or do you have a kind of a
Yeah, I mean,
time?
what we had initially talked about last week was that we could get out this nomination form soon after today's meeting, publicize that through the town, ideally get responses back about a month from now, and have our first meeting in late October. So that would be out of alignment with the next town journal publication date. So we'd have to look at publicizing it through other means if we wanted to keep that timeline.
What we could do is do a postcard with a, you know, a QR code if people want to get more information, and send them to whatever application form that you want them to fill out.
Okay.
So that's something you could meet with Carrie Ann on. She can help put that together, and Alex, I'm sure, you know, so people can just fill it out online and then just email it back to you guys or whatever. But I think a postcard gets it to every resident, and then they can just take it from there. So hopefully.
Okay.
I mean, even in the
Great.
journal, people might not open it right away. They may not go through the entire thing. So I think a postcard for that might be a good way of doing it.
So I must say, I was rather heartened to see that people are reading the journal.
I
given
know. I
People read Connor's article and we heard about it. So
yes, but I don't know how many that actually is, but it was a good sign that people are opening their journal for sure. Okay. All right. Anybody have any questions about this in the audience, or Nate? Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just to clarify, not clarify, but just encourage to, when you do comprise the committee, to reach out to the businesses too, to get business representation, because I know you probably, that's a given for you, but Anne, you know how that has helped, at least preliminarily, in the Sustainable Kensington effort. So I think also I'm just excited by this parking task force. I wish I could be a member of it, but council rules disallow that. So, you know, as much as we can draw the links with the other working groups and committees, please count on us, count on me.
thank you, Nate. I think it goes without saying there's connection to the mobility and PBAS work group, Sustainable Kensington as well. You know, Connor has his DRB hat, so we will be looking for those linkages. And your point about the business representatives is part of why we felt it made sense to do this call for nominations, so that we can be really intentional about pulling in a cross section of perspectives in the community.
Well, and I don't know if you get further down the line, if you get to a point where you maybe need like a consultant or somebody who can really help you with that is something that we should look at as well.
Yes, thank you. We have talked about that and expect that that could be part of what we need to do here.
Okay, good. All right. Okay, so let's before we do public appearances, I know we're running a little late, but I just want to go through the council to see if you guys have anything you want to add to what we currently have, and then we'll just close out with from the town manager and staff. So Darren, do you have anything to say or add?
I have nothing to add.
Okay. Nate?
Nothing, just a quick flag to the council that I notified the MTC just tonight about the merging with PBAS working group. And Matt, I'm going to invite them to the next PBAS, what was called the PBAS meeting on October 7th. I don't know if we'll have MTC issues to discuss, but if we do, like what are typically MTC Mobility and Traffic Committee issues, if we do, let me know and we can add them to the agenda. Otherwise, I think it would probably make sense to have a meeting shortly after, maybe in November, with MTC and PBAS combined. And along those lines, can we get a meeting set up with SHA sometime in the next month or two?
Yeah, I'll reach out to Chen Yu and see what she can do. So
great, thank you.
Okay. Anne?
Just a couple of quick things. I want to thank the town staff, as well as Kensington CAN, our business group, and Kensington Racial Justice Committee. We did have a lovely 4th annual back to school block party over on the lawn of the Kensington House Apartments, and shout out to Nate and Connor for providing some muscle at the end with breaking down the tables and the chairs, and Tracy, you too. It was a really nice event. We had a good turnout. It was great now that so many new residents are in the Glen apartment building, we drew a lot of them into the community, which was really nice. And I just want to also recognize that Ellie and Tyler with Kensington Can were very helpful with getting a little library installed on that street. So it's a nice new amenity to add to that area. And thank Matt and Alex also and the crew for making that possible. One other quick thing, I know, also thank you for all the effort that goes into Labor Day. There's a huge amount of labor for Labor Day. So really want to thank the town staff and everyone for making that another, special day in the community. I've had a number of questions about the length of the parade. Why did it seem shorter? And I know it varies based on political season and other factors. But I don't know if there's an extra effort we need to make in future years to recruit back into the parade some more of the musical groups or dancing groups that we used to have pre-COVID. Things sort of changed during the COVID years.
I think a lot of it is getting people. That's a really tough call of getting people to want to walk in a parade. Now, we had great weather, this past weekend, but before we've had some pretty miserable hot days, and it's hard for some people to walk. But yeah, I know part of it is getting people. I know there was a comment about the food trucks. Now, this particular commenter came on Kensington Parkway. I've never known the food trucks to be on Kensington Parkway, so he must have meant Armory. But even food trucks are now getting harder to get. I think people are finding that they're maybe not the money makers that they thought they were, and you become a slave to your food truck because you have to be out there all the time. But Matt said it was really hard to get food trucks this year to come out. So
yeah, I mean, even alcohol. We
only had one Baby Cat.
We were turned down by 4 alcohol vendors.
It was all about staffing.
Well, it's profit too. They don't turn the profit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I have a quick question. Wasn't it also the conflict with Gaithersburg's parade at the same time?
I don't think we lost out necessarily to food trucks because of Gaithersburg. We might have lost out having Angela also Brook there instead of, just the people that were walking there. But this particular year, I don't think we missed out too much on the elected officials. I do worry about like a year where you're going to have the governor. The governor may not pick Gaithersburg over us.
But let's be clear, I don't know that Mayor Tracy would ever want to yield anything to the city of
Gaithersburg.
Oh, no. I was actually proposing the opposite, that we have to advocate for them to move theirs back to where
we'll be talking to Jed soon about that. So
got it.
I actually talked to one of the council members already and he acted surprised. Oh, did we? So
I think it was
I'm not even sure it went before the council, the way that particular council member was thinking that, oh, I don't remember that. Okay. Anyway. Okay. Is there anything else, Ann? Okay. Connor?
Nothing extra.
Okay. I did want to ask the council, I sent out a thing. They're trying to fill some seats, I think, for the housing. Secretary of Housing is coming to, I think it was Silver Spring Methodist Church. He's coming to talk about housing. Secretary Jake Day. I didn't know whether one of you, I can't go.
Yeah, that's the 23rd.
Yeah, the 23rd.
I just got to look at my schedule and see if I can make that work.
Okay. It would be nice if somebody could go. I think they're just trying to, you don't get one of the secretaries very often.
I will be out of the country for work.
Okay.
Those 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, if somebody could go, that'd be great. But if if we can't, we can't. I think they'd like to have an RSVP soon.
Okay, I'll look at it tonight and
if you
send you. And am I RSVPing? Is Susan RSVPing for me?
I think you would RSVP. If there's any chance, the town will pay for it. But it's Jake Day's a great guy. He used to be the mayor of Salisbury, and then Westmore plucked him from Salisbury. He's a really good guy.
Yeah, we met Ann. You and I met him. Because Salisbury was one of the jurisdictions that did the housing in Annapolis at the MML.
Okay.
Yeah, the picture's not coming up in the email, but I do remember that.
Yeah.
All right, and it looks like I'm also available that night. I don't know if we send two or Connor and I reserve for one.
Carpool.
And
You could carpool.
then, okay.
Okay, great. That'd be super. So if you could let her know that you're coming, that'd be great. Okay, and I too want to thank the staff, Lisa and Victoria, for Labor Day. It's an awful lot of work, and the Public Works. I mean, it is a tough weekend. Public Works worked almost all day on Saturday, and then they were there early Monday morning, and then they have to clean it all up. And I think we finally got everything put away last Friday. So it just takes a while to get really back together. And then I want to thank the Dittos for the train show. It was a phenomenal, as always, big event, huge turnout. And so they were very pleased. And of course, that supports the Kensington Historical Society and Noyes Library. So many thanks for that. And Victoria, I'm going to go back to Labor Day, sorry, but Victoria, who ran the parade, she has retired. She has a new mom, and she's become a principal at one of the elementary schools, I believe. And so she's busy. So we are passing the baton on to someone else. I don't know is that a permanent thing? Do you want to announce that, or should we?
I'm not ready to announce that. I think
Okay.
we haven't confirmed that yet.
Okay, well, we'll wait.
We have a replacement in
we have
mind.
a possible person that will be running the parade for next year. So it's very exciting.
Oh, thanks, Darren.
I was looking at Alex.
Very
She was smiling a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
No,
anyway.
I'm just kidding.
All right. Let's see. Is there any questions regarding our reports?
The only thing I'd add is a reminder, the Kensington 8K is
Yes,
the 21st.
Yes. Yes.
So participate, that supports our schools, or just know that there are going to be some road closures on a few streets in and around Kensington Cabin Park, the Circle, and Armory. So that's the 21st.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay. All right. Well, we will move on with public appearances. It's that first opportunity to bring something up that is not on the agenda. Joe?
Thank you, Mayor Furman. It was mentioned a few moments ago about reading the town journal. And in reading the town journal, I learned that about the passing of David Gregg, who was the town's tree expert for many, many years. And it was a really great guy. And his loss will be widely felt in town. And he worked up until very close to his his passing. He was 94, and so I found out about this from reading the town journal. And I was wondering if the wood carving that was put up to recognize his work. I just wonder if that's beginning to fade a little bit.
It is, and Jason's going to take care of that. He said he would brighten it up again.
Good, because I think it deserves attention, and it's very close to town hall too.
Yes.
Just a couple of questions for the the parking task force. I was wondering if they plan to have a certain size of the task force in terms of membership, and whether they will be vetting the nominations, or will that be left to the town council, or just what role would the council have in that nomination process?
We talked about a size of around 12, perhaps, but we'll see what the level of interest is. Probably no more than 15 if we did have high interest. And in terms of reviewing, the nominations that come in, I think Connor and I would do that together. I don't think it needs to come forward, each candidate for approval. We would more than likely bring an update back to the town council of sharing the interest that we got and how we're planning to move forward. Connor, do you want to add to that?
No, the only thing, let's say we had an abundance of volunteers and we have to pick a subset of that. Really, as Ed and I mentioned, our goal is to have a very purposeful cross-section. We want to have people from what we're calling each quadrant, the quadrant being Connecticut Avenue, dividing the town east and west, and then Knowles, and the train tracks dividing it north and south. So we just want to try and get representation from each of those quadrants as much as possible. The northeast quadrant, so to speak, is there's businesses, but there's no real residential to get from there. But that's our goal, is to make sure that we have representation from each part of the town.
You said northeast, but I think you meant northwest, right?
Yeah, I'm northeast.
You're northeast. And there are lots of houses there. Does that answer your question, Joe?
Thanks, Mayor Furman.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right, so moving on to the town manager and staff. Matt?
Council, we had a request from the owner of the Serpro property to extend his lease, his existing lease at 10528 St. Paul Street until December 31st, 2024. He has found a location to move to. It is just outside the town. It is the old Rock Spring location on Pliers Mill. However, his lease does not begin until January 1st, 2025. Our town attorney is working with Ms. Warner, the property owner's attorney, Ms. Klein, on potentially allowing a lease in the month of October, but we needed to give her some kind of guidance on if we would be willing to extend a lease for 60 days to serve pro. Staff has no opposition to this. We are not ready to take over the property just yet, so this is not an issue for us or would hinder any architectural or engineering requirements for the property before we take hold on November 1st.
I just want to be clear, we could take over the property. We just aren't ready to start doing, architectural things and, so we don't need to.
Correct. So we are still scheduled to close on the property on November 1st, but we are not prepared to, move on the property with regards to a future public works site or any developments at this point. So a 60-day lease is not of concern to the staff.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, Council, do you have any questions about that? Any concerns?
I think since we don't have use, I think it makes a lot of sense. And supportive of that business to relocate nearby, I think is a great. My one question would be, if I understand the Rock Spring building is going under some renovations, is there any concern that that won't get done by December 31st? And if so, will we just take it up at that time? Or do you want to write at least that would,
that was
we
brought
can
up
say through December 31st, but what happens if they're not ready?
So that was brought up in our conversations with Ms. Klein, who's the attorney for Ms. Warner. It seems like everything's moving forward. They should be in there by January 1st. But we can also, we could run the extension through January 31st if we need to. Again, this is not going to hinder our engineering and architectural of the property. So,
okay.
To clarify, we would extend the existing lease agreement, so there would be no reduction in rent. We would collect rent as they are paying now to Ms. Warner. So there would be no change in that. We would just extend the existing lease agreement and require a monetary amount put up front just for the property to secure it. I will also mention, just for public information, we did have a phase 1 environmental study done on the property. We did find a vent that they believe is to an underground storage containment system. We are going through a phase 2. It is scheduled for September 18th. It does not change our acquisition or anything. We just kind of need to clarify and confirm what's underneath the parking area of the property. And we'll be able to provide that information to the council once we have it. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you want a motion, or are you okay with just everyone?
Yeah, I think a motion. We'll have to bring the lease back to the council under a resolution. But to offer an extension, I think a motion would be good.
Okay. Can I get a motion to extend the ServPro lease? That would be November through January.
Do we need any public comment on it first?
Oh, is there a public comment? Sorry, there's so few people left. Okay. All right, thank you. Can I get a motion?
I move that we authorize the town manager to extend a lease to the ServPro property through December 31st, 2025. 4.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I,
Thank you. All right, Matt, last thing?
I actually have two things.
sorry.
Pumpkin Rock, I'll bring up Pumpkin
Oh, yeah.
Rock first.
Okay,
Sean Geiser spoke with Alex and I this afternoon and is planning to move forward with Pumpkin Rock and Roll. Warner Circle is beginning their construction, so he would like to move it to Howard Avenue. They did conduct Pumpkin Rock and Roll back in 2019 on Howard Avenue. It would not be a full closure of the street. We would do a detour with access on Armory and Fawcett Street, so it would only be the block between Armory and Fawcett on Howard. As a commercial street and as our main street, it is our policy to come to the council before we consider closing our main street for an event. Mr. Geiser was going to talk with Joanne Parker, who is the manager of Antique Village, to confirm that the courtyard could be used for the event as well. So we'll probably bring this back, but I just kind of wanted to make sure that the council would be okay with us to continue the conversations to possibly have the event on Howard Avenue.
could you
Matt.
offer or let them know the suggested date and time for this?
It's Saturday, October 26th. The proposed time is 12 noon to 4 p.m. We did propose them maybe changing the hours a little bit. We suggest maybe a little earlier or maybe a little later, so it's not right in the middle of the day. It's kind of at our discretion, really, if we're going to close the street. So
And was Sunday an option?
Sunday was not an option for him. The reason a farmer's market is Saturday, so this would conflict with the farmer's market, but it would not, the closure would not affect the traffic to the farmer's market. You just have to go down Armory or Fawcett and cut across Mitchell to get around the detour.
I have some real concern. I mean, I want Pumpkin Rock and Roll to come, but Howard Avenue has become quite the busy place on a Saturday. I mean, it's very, very busy, especially on a nice day. And
Yeah,
I have some real concerns about, taking away this block and then sending everybody around to get around it. I mean, whatever the council wants to do, but I definitely have concerns about it. And I would prefer a Sunday. I don't think it's nearly as busy. It will be, closing of streets are always a distraction, just, it's hard for people. They don't like it. I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that on a Saturday morning?
Well, has Sean given, I know obviously Gigs is right there and that makes logistics far easier. But the option was he used to drive everything over the circle. Has he looked at other locations within town? I'm just going off the top of my head. St. Paul Park, right?
Yeah,
we have power.
We did talk to them about St. Paul Park last year.
Mm-hmm.
They had some concerns, obviously, the location. The only concerns staff has with St. Paul is the parking. There is no parking at St. Paul, as opposed to at least Warner Circle. There's at least a little more. You're closer to Town Hall. You can park at the Bakers Union. There's just really no options on the north side. I think it's a good location. I think that event would fit St. Paul Park. The question is parking on a Saturday at St. Paul Park. So
I mean, we deal with that for Juneteenth, which we it's not ideal. We manage.
Yeah, and I think Juneteenth shows that it can be done. Other moves would be, I don't know what the calendar is for the building, but what about Town Hall and the park across the street? We shut it down for Labor Day. It's a little bit less intrusive than Howard, but the grass there, the building, you have parking. I just think there's other places than Howard Avenue that haven't been fully explored.
Yeah, I had a similar thought. That one block of Armory where we mark off for the tables on Labor Day, then you've got the park on the other side. And I think we very effectively used the lawn in front of Town Hall for Labor Day with the band down below. I thought that setup worked well.
Yeah,
just
keep in mind though, in October, there's probably a play group in there.
Yeah, that's what I wasn't sure about.
There's more than likely a play group in there.
Okay.
Hmm.
Certainly can check the date, but you know, I mean, to me, it would be perfect just doing everything in town hall if it were available.
Well, and also bathrooms, there's all sorts of logistics that work really well. But I guess we can check the date on that. But I still think Juneteenth, which has gotten, thousands of people, demonstrates that, well, it's not ideal. And that's my front yard. It can be done.
Am I hearing that people are concerned about closing Howard Avenue and we want to look for another location? Is that what I'm hearing? Or is anybody okay with closing Howard Avenue? Period.
I would say it is such a popular event that I would really like it to happen, with closing out Howard Avenue being maybe the last option, but not to prevent it from happening by not closing it.
Can we insist on a Sunday afternoon?
Star Street. If we're not okay with a Saturday and we offer a Sunday, then that's all he's offered. So. I mean, what about time? Would you want it a little further in the evening?
I mean, I think after the farmer's market, if you did a 2 o'clock or something like that, then most of the activities down on the other end are slowing up a little bit. I don't like midday on a Saturday closing Howard Avenue. I have real concerns about that.
Yeah, I don't know, based on your conversation that you had today, it feels like going back and exploring these other ideas and the availability of town hall, given the concerns with Howard Avenue on a Saturday, would be a good next step. But I agree, it's a great event. We'd love to see it again. We just want to manage how to do it in a way that works well.
I mean, worst case scenario, you take this year off and come back next year when it's available again, hopefully within a year. Although it could not, it may be 2 years, quite honestly.
Yeah, it's unlikely this will be a delay for a few years from Warner. So
yeah.
I'd be happy to help work with you, Sean. I'm looking real quick, and I guess we can check with Shirley in the morning. British players don't start till December 4th. And Kat says that they're taking a hiatus this season on their website.
I talked to Shirley about that because she's got them on their calendar.
She's got them at least for November. I don't know about October.
Yeah, what their website says and what he's telling Shirley are two different things. I mean, I can get her to call Craig and say, are you in here in October or not? I mean, he should
we can
be
check that specific date.
crying out loud. Yeah. So
all right, hold on. They say they're going to be coming back, but their website is different. Yeah, why don't we check on that? Because I think Town Hall in Armory, right, could be a very good location for it.
Because you could have the pumpkin races out in the parking lot. You could rope off the back and have people being able to go out in the back too.
Yeah, and then when all the pumpkins are smashed, they can just go right into the compost bin.
There you go. That's a good idea.
Solves its own problem.
Good. I like that.
All right, Matt, I'll give you a call tomorrow and we can see if we can't talk to Sean about it.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's check that date too. Okay. All right. Well, we have concerns about closing Howard Avenue. Let's leave it with that. Okay.
Fine with me. That's why we brought it to the council.
Okay.
And thank you, Connor, Matt, and Alex for working on this.
Okay,
All right. To
Last
bring us
item.
home, Mayor Furman, Alex, and I have been working with Margaret Upton, who is an architect in the area and has worked on a number of homes in the community, on a proposed schematic to do some renovations at Town Hall, specifically to kind of clean up our office areas, give us some space to actually do some work, make it a little more welcoming to the community. As anyone knows who comes in Town Hall, you walk up the steps, you don't really know where to go. The elevator's on the opposite side of the steps. So she has put together a schematic. We're reviewing it right now. We're going to get a proposal for the cost proposal for the proposed renderings and construction. And we hope to have something to the council maybe in November. At least with a cost proposal and a kind of a firm site plan of what we're planning to do in the offices. So.
Yeah, she really did lay out the spaces quite nicely. So, and this is also a security issue. MML is really pushing this pretty hard because of some of the other municipalities that have had people wandering in and really, and because most of the staff are female and terrorizing the staff. And I know several municipalities that their town hall is locked. You got to call to be buzzed in. You don't just walk in like we do where we are, which is too bad. So.
Just a question of curiosity. What are the plans for where you all will work and operate from during construction?
So the disruption should be limited. The major change that we're looking at is really to elevate where Alex's office is right now to bring it up with our level. So that would be the largest disruption. And then kind of over where the copy machine is, that would become almost like a reception area with some glass windows. So when you enter the town hall offices, you know, whether it's the steps or the elevator, you can see someone, you'll know where to go, they'll be able to direct you. So that shouldn't really mess anyone up. We could move the copy machine over to the other end. So it's really just Alex who could work out of the conference room, the map room, or even Tracy's office is large enough to handle her during construction. So
I think there'd be a lot of moving around. There might be some, days where the office will have to be closed. But we can work remotely now. So there's that option if we need to close the office for a short period of time. But most likely we wouldn't be doing anything until, the summer. So more than likely, late June, July, August, if everything goes as planned, when the work would be done. And we're not doing much. I don't think we're moving any plumbing. I don't believe, at least on the first edition we saw, and then minor electrical.
there's one issue with a duct.
Yeah.
And we would move the sink over into where Susan's office is right now. We'd basically kind of flip that out.
Oh, yeah.
It would give us a real refrigerator, which has been a challenge for 5 employees, having a college dorm room size refrigerator. And again, just having a little bit more space to work is really what our challenge is. So. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if there aren't any more questions, is there anything else, Matt? Susan or Alex?
Just confirm our October meeting is Thursday, October 10th. That's Thursday, October 10th. Right now we're scheduled for 7 p.m. In public and on Zoom. That could change, but right now we are scheduled to be in person, and on Zoom.
All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
See you later, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.